All right, on this page, we are on page 15 of the robot game rules. We're looking at the before the match rules relating specifically to equipment. Now remember, equipment refers to anything that the team brings to the table. There's 7 rules we're going to look at. So the equipment a team brings to the robot field, such as the robot, its attachments, so robot, attachments, accessories, those are all equipment. Any equipment you bring has to be a Lego piece. So you can't bring anything that's not made by Lego, and it has to be in original factory condition. You can't modify any Lego pieces. The only exceptions to this, if you're using Lego string or pneumatic tubes, you are allowed to cut those to length. But any bricks, wires, sensors, anything like that has to be factory condition. If it's not made by Lego, you can't use it. In terms of the pieces you're allowed to use, if it's a non-electric Lego piece, you can use as many from any set. So if it's made by Lego, you can use it. And if it's not an electric Lego piece, so non-electric Lego piece, you can use as many of them as you like. Now, there are some restrictions on the electric Lego equipment. So here's what we allow. We allow controllers, motors, and sensors. In terms of the controller, you're allowed 1 in any match. So you're allowed to bring multiple to the competition, but when you go to the table for a match, you can only have 1. So keep that in mind. In terms of motors, you're allowed 4 motors in 1 match. So you can bring, 100 motors to the competition with you as long as you only bring 4 to each match. And there's different kinds of motors. For example, there's for the Spike, the most common ones you'll see are the large and the medium motors. It's 4 no matter what kind they are. All right, and finally we've got sensors. The only sensors you're allowed to use are a touch force sensor, a color sensor, a distance or ultrasonic sensor, and a gyro sensor. And you're allowed to use any number in any one match up to your heart's content. So you can bring 1,000 sensors with you, and if you want to use 1,000 sensors in a match, go ahead, try it. A few things to note. In the diagram and drawings here, right, we see all these Spike parts. These are for the Lego Spike Prime. You are allowed to use the Lego Spike Prime, the Mindstorms EV3, the Mindstorms Robot Inventor, Powered Up, as well as the equivalent NXT and RCX. I don't know why this is here. We have the Lego Spike Essential. That is allowed. If you are an FLL Challenge team, I'm begging you, do not use a Spike Essential. It is not sufficient for what you're going to be doing. You can bring it, you can try it. It's allowed, but it's not going to be as effective as the others. Now, in terms of Spike Prime versus Mindstorms EV3 versus Mindstorms NXT, there are discussions to be had there, but they're all fairly comparable. My recommendation is obviously going to be for the Spike Prime because it's the current technology and it's what all the resources are in. I recommend the Spike Prime. The only one I do not recommend is the Spike Essential. So keep that in mind. All right, you can use Lego wires. You can use a controller power pack or AA batteries. You're also allowed a micro SD card. The micro SD card is there if you're trying to load an alternate operating system, especially on the EV3. It's a very common technique I see there. But like I said, these are all allowed. So these are the things you can use. Like I said, Lego wires, controller, power pack, AA batteries, micro SD card. Okay, so those are other things that are counting as equipment. Programming languages. You can use any software or programming language you want. With the Lego Spike application, you can use their icon blocks, their word blocks, or you can use their Python programming. There's also a Pybricks Python programming API that's out there. And then for the EV3 as well, you can use Pybricks or you can use a ton of other options. You can install a new operating system on a micro SD card and do Java, whatever you're comfortable with. Most of the resources are going to be geared toward some flavor of the spike, but whatever you have the resources and tools for, go for it. 1 sheet of notebook paper per home area. So there's 2 home areas, right? When we saw the table, we remember we had this diagram where we had the table like this, and there were 2 launch areas, and you had your 2 homes. There's 2 home areas, so you can have 2 sheets of notebook paper, 1 for each end. It does not count as equipment, so you can just have it. And this is a big one. Additional or duplicate mission models are not allowed. If you had an idea, say, oh, I really like, let's say you really liked the shark mission model and you wanted to make it part of your robot. You are not allowed to do that because it is an additional or a duplicate mission model as to what's already on the table. So this is where it gets kind of a gray area, right? You can use pieces that are in your challenge set. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because you want to have those intact so you can do your practice. But if you say, hey, you know what, we're not really going to try this mission, but I really like the pieces that are in it, I want to use the pieces. As long as the pieces don't form the mission model on your robot, as long as they're all separated out and reconfigured into something totally different, that's okay. But you can't just take one of the full mission models and attach it to your robot and say, hey, this is my equipment, we're good to go. And so for that reason, you want to think about kind of this Venn diagram here where they don't connect, where you've got equipment and you've got mission models. Equipment is equipment and mission models are mission models, and never the two shall combine. So if it's equipment, it's not a mission model. If it's a mission model, it's not equipment. So these rules are important. They are more important to make sure that you don't go into the competition expecting to be able to do something or have something that you're not allowed to have. That's what these rules are for and why you should make sure you get comfortable with them early in the season. So when you start talking about how you're going to build your robot, it'd be a good time to talk about these rules, because these rules will say what are you allowed to put in your robot and what are you not allowed to put in your robot. Right? In the next video, we're going to talk more about the setup for the match.